There, how's that? For my special effects opening here at Ken the Metal Professor's Media Corner. Most of my videos are from Ken the Metal Professor's music basement. You are literally in my basement, although the books behind me, the science fiction fantasy books, maybe they tell you that I'm not talking about music. Although when I am talking about music, I don't have my CDs behind me. I usually have my comics behind me because my CD collection is squished because I took all the CDs out of their jewel cases. So CDs that normally would go, you know, they're like this because they all squish together and it's not very impressive. So anyway, I figured as long as I was making lots of videos about music, I would also make a few about other interests of mine, basically because I have no friends. You know, I've got the family here, but I think it's you know, all of the people that I've known the best live in other parts of the country. I'm connected to them electronically, of course. I get to see them every year at a big music festival, Prog Power USA. That's where I do most of my socializing, once a year. So here I am, sitting at home. Now, I do a lot of electronic passive interaction. You know, I listen to people that do podcasts. I watch other people's videos, et cetera, et cetera. It seems to be the way to go. The YouTube videos now are the modern day equivalent of, hey, come over to my basement and look at my record collection, or let's watch a movie, or let's talk about our favorite TV shows. So I'm just trying to participate. And, you know, I get all this stuff buzzing around in my brain, and this is a way to help flush it out so I can move on. So my last Media Corner video, I talked about my experience watching Star Trek Voyager. You know, that's why this, my old-fashioned Enterprise telephone thing. You know what, folks? This is just not my day for making videos. Right before I made this one, I spent about 15 or 20 minutes recording a video for the music side of things to go with my radio show, where I listed my top 10 favorite Angra songs and I ranked the Angra CDs from my least favorite to favorite. And when I finished up, I realized that I found out that somewhere in between testing my mic and recording the actual video, my mic had shut off. And so I recorded the whole thing with no sound. So I had to do it again. And then I figured, well, as long as I'm at it, I'll do this one too. And I just got up to the point where I swooped that old stupid Enterprise thing across the screen, and my computer said, something's wrong, I have to shut down. And it just shut down on me. Fortunately, good job Camtasia had that video in progress stored, so I was able to recover it. So there's no way for me to smoothly get out of that and into this and make it look like nothing happened, so I'm just going to pick up where I left off, saying that my previous video in the Media Corner side of things, I was talking about my experience watching Star Trek Voyager. I had finished Enterprise and I went to Voyager, and so I gave my thoughts on like the first half of it. So now I'm ready to talk about what I thought about Voyager altogether, as well as the latest two Star Trek series, and sort of put it all together, just because, you know, in case anybody else likes to listen to other people's thoughts about these things. So the last time I reported in on this, I think I'd made it through about season 4 or so of Voyager. I found seasons 3 through 5 to be the strongest so far. By about season 6.5 out of 7, or I'm sorry, like 5.5 out of 7, or was it 6.5? Wherever they introduced the Borg babies, right? That's where I think it started going a little bit downhill. Having Naomi Wildman as a kid aboard the ship was actually fine. One of the things Voyager did really well was pick the casting for the kids in the show. 9 times out of 10, you put a kid in a show, the kid's going to be obnoxious. Nobody's going to like them, and not for the reasons that they want you to not like them, if any, because of the plot. They're going to be uptight, you know. We all came to love Will Wheaton, but boy, you know, when he first started in Star Trek The Next Generation, he was a little uptight. Everybody on that cast was a little uptight. You know, pick another show. I'm watching The Good Wife right now. I'm only in the first season, but the kids who play the daughters and son of the main character are just annoying. Not that they're annoying because of the storyline, which is they are. They annoy me. Kids annoy me. Naomi Wildman was a spectacular casting choice. She was not annoying. Okay, the bumps on her forehead were annoying. There was no need for that. But she herself, I thought she was delightful. I really enjoyed when she was in the scenes. I loved listening to 7 of 9 call her Naomi Wildman by her full name. Okay, all that was good. But then they got to the Borg babies, where they rescued the youngster Borgs out of the Borg nursery or whatever it was. I mean, they were like older kids and teenagers with some experience and age behind them. But still, that was a little bit excessive in terms of adding extra cast to the show, although the inclusion of Icheb got a little bit smoother and then paid off in the Star Trek Picard series. I will be spoiling some things. I will try to warn you when I'm about to do so, but just saying that is not really that much of a spoiler. Also, the teenage kid that they had play the son of Q in Q2. I think this was in maybe it was season 6.5 where I think all this stuff started happening. The kid that played Q2 was actually John Delancey's son, and he was terrific. I would have loved to have him around. I mean, now there was a casting choice where the kid was playing somebody you were supposed to be aggravated by because that's what the character did. But he did it in such a charming way that you appreciate what he's doing even though you're being aggravated by him for the proper reasons, not because the actor himself is annoying. I would have loved for him to stick around too. But anyway, from that, about season 6.5 on, I didn't think it was that strong. But seasons 3 through 5 are very, very good overall. Touching my touchpad so that my screen doesn't blank out on me. So if you have been thinking about getting into Voyager, because everybody has all this free time now, I can recommend it. I can say that by the time you get to the end of it, maybe it's not as strong as it was, but it's still worth it. It's a lot of fun. Now, I did notice a few times in watching Voyager that there are some similarities between what's going on in Voyager and WWE, right? Because I am also a wrestling fan. And things that happen in Voyager are very similar to things that happen in WWE. And let me give you a couple of examples. First of all, writers who set up internal logic and then totally ignore it. This happens in professional wrestling all the time. Characters do things, and then those things are dropped, forgotten, never mentioned again, or twisted into something completely different. In Voyager, it seems like there are inconsistencies in the geography of space and in some of the things that are happening. Some of the choices the characters make don't seem to be in line. I mean, it's a long series, and they're not going to be able to be totally consistent along those lines. But other little things that just get you, right? Like at a couple of points in the series, there are punctuated distancings of the ship, right? They start over in the Delta Quadrant, they're trying to get home, and a few times they come across something that allows them to leap way ahead in their trip and cut a few years off of it. That happened, I think, somewhere in season 5, where they found basically a big giant space catapult that launched them. I don't know if it was like 3,000 light years, 30,000 light years. It took a good chunk off of their journey home, right? That's fine. Then, several episodes later, here comes Kes, who hasn't been on the show since season 4 when 7 of 9 was introduced. Here she comes in her little space scooter. How did she catch up with Voyager? If Voyager used this, I mean, I guess maybe Kes could have used this thing, but would the people that had it have used little old Kes or let little old Kes borrow their space catapult so she could catch up to Voyager? I don't know. So little things like that drove me nuts. Another thing that drove me nuts, much like WWE, is when they saw something go well once, they beat it the hell into the ground. In WWE, a recent example of this is Keith Lee. He's on NXT, and there was I don't know if it was by accident or by planning, but there was a great visual shot once where he was in a match with somebody else, had been thrown to the floor. The other guy's in the ring celebrating. I think it's a tag team match. And then the camera shows him standing there gloating, and Keith Lee just rises up from right behind him to glower, and you know that this guy is about to get clobbered. That was a great shot. WWE saw it. They knew it was a great shot. They probably saw the reaction it was getting when people were talking about what a great shot. And for at least the next 3 Keith Lee matches, they forced that shot into every single match. They take something that works once and they beat it the hell into the ground. Charlotte Flair was delivering a promo a couple of years ago. I think maybe it was a year or 2 years, I don't know. She was talking to somebody. I think she was in the ring talking to somebody backstage. At the end of the promo, she gave a wink, right? It was a very knowing wink and a very snotty wink. It was gorgeous. It was a great placement. I think it was spontaneous. WWE caught on to it. They said, wow, that looked really good. Why don't you do that every time you give a promo? And so from that point on, for quite a while, every time she got on the microphone, she would finish up with, okay, they don't just have something work once and let it go. They beat it the hell into the ground. Voyager is the Doctor and his singing. We discover in season 3 or 4 that the Doctor can sing, and that's because Robert Picardo is a trained opera singer, right? He has a good voice. They used it in an episode in, like I'm saying, season 3. I didn't write it down, but season 3, season 4, I don't know. Did they leave it at that? No. They had to go back to it, and go back to it, and go back to it for multiple different episodes. They even got 7 of 9 in on the action, where they made sure to have duets between the Doctor and 7 of 9, and that got aggravating. So, apart from those quibbles, Voyager is a good show. I do recommend it, even though it gets a little bit weaker towards the end, especially after the introduction of the Borg babies. Excuse me. I'm gonna sip my Starbucks iced coffee. I should clip that out. I probably won't. I did not buy it from a drive-thru. In my music video on Anger that I just did, I explained that I bought the quarter-gallon jug of pre-made Starbucks iced coffee last time I was at the grocery store. The very end of Voyager, obviously is the big finale where they get to come home. I won't say a whole lot about it, spoiling it a little bit, but it's yet another time travel episode, and this time it's old Janeway figuring out a way to go back in time and stop the Voyager from, stop her young self from making a particular choice that's going to go bad, and then this allows the ship to finally get home with the guidance of old Janeway. This was very unsatisfying because you've been following the regular crew for 7 years, and it turns out that they didn't get home on their own. They didn't figure something out. They didn't make something special happen. They got rescued by old Janeway. So they were not able to do the job themselves. To me, that undercut a good portion of the entire series. Also, they did finally make it home. You didn't really get to see the homecoming at the end of the show. The show stops kind of abruptly, which is okay, that's fine. You got a time limit, right? If you're done telling a story, you got no more time. What are you going to do? But they're home, and you think, okay, now they're gonna live happily ever after. It's gonna be great. But then we get to Star Trek Picard, the new series on CBS, and you learn that it was all for naught because life is miserable in the Federation pretty soon after that, and Voyager would have been better off staying in the Gamma Quadrant. So there's that too. Okay, so that's my segue to talking about the next 2 Star Trek shows that are on now, Discovery and Picard. All right, my thoughts on Star Trek Discovery. Why you care, I don't know, but my camera is on, so I'm going to keep talking. I didn't like it. I don't like it. It isn't done yet, so I can't say I didn't like all of it. We all have to remember that even in the original series, right, the first episodes, the characters weren't the characters that we know quite yet. Spock was still smiling at things and being not quite as purely unemotional as we would come to know him later on. People were uptight. They were still shaking things out. Star Trek Enterprise, same thing. Star Trek Voyager, Next Generation, think about how uptight Will Wheaton and Marina Sirtis were in their roles when they first started, right? Okay, it takes a while to adjust. We can't expect to love a new series immediately the same way we look back and say we love the old ones. Having said that, even after 2 seasons, I'm worried about whether I will ever intend to like Discovery. Now, it got better in the 2nd season, and maybe it will get even better in the 3rd. Who knows? But basically, following up Voyager and Deep Space Nine, even Deep Space Nine and the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine was a darker episode, and it was, literally darker, right? Because they were in a space station. The lighting wasn't as bright and colorful as it was in Voyager and Next Generation. But those series were bright and colorful. The ship, the station, they looked like a place you might like to be. Discovery is dark. It's filmed in darkness. The setting is dark. The society is dark. It just doesn't look like a place you would want to be. And to me, that sort of spoils it being Star Trek, right? If I want a place to look like somewhere I don't want to be, I will go watch The Expanse. And even there, where I don't want to be on a space station or in the ship, the story is still interesting. The characters in Discovery don't click very quickly. There's a bridge crew that's introduced. There are several characters in the bridge crew that even after the entire first season, I had no idea what their names were. I know that's the person that stands over there. There was this robot head lady that is in almost every bridge scene that there is. She's cool to look at, but you wonder who she is, why she's there. You don't know. And you still don't know, and you still don't know, until finally it comes time for her to play a role, like halfway through season 2. It was actually season 2, episode 9, where she was finally developed and given a story, only for her story to end, right? So what was that all about? The ship, it's ugly. It's not lit like real human beings would light a living environment that they're going to be in and day out. This is where the lighting designers are getting themselves all buzz about whatever their techniques are and making it all artsy, right? I'm sure that whatever board meeting helped design this show, words like gritty and dark and realistic and edgy were thrown around a lot. See, even my dog, you can hear her barking. She's agreeing with me right now. The visuals, I don't enjoy them. The camera swoops around when you're watching people. It has close-ups where all you can see is like from the upper part of the chin to the forehead. If the camera is panning across, it's going to be dark, but at some point you're going to be blinded by two lights shining right in your face or behind one of the characters. Lens flares everywhere. Dutch angles where the camera tips like this. I just learned that term from my daughter the other day. It's just, I like shots. I like bright. I like colorful. This is the opposite of that. It's like watching the show through a dirty window. The effects are really, really good, particularly like in space battles and warping itself. It's very slick. When there's a lot of ships shooting each other, that's actually pretty cool. The sound effects are great, but the ship itself, in close-up, it looks pretty cool. It's got this spinning, the spore drive. Let's not even talk about that. The frisbee part of the disc that spins around in a circle. In close-ups, that's really cool. But then when you're seeing the ship from a distance and it's flying through space, it looks like a flying potato chip. So it's a little inconsistent. The second season was saved by the introduction of Anson Mount playing Christopher Pike. I've liked Anson Mount since I saw him in Hell on Wheels and watched that for all 5 or 6 seasons. When he enters the bridge the first time, he takes over the show. He's still wearing the bright yellow Star Trek Enterprise shirt because he transfers over from the Enterprise. You get to see the Enterprise. That's pretty cool. He comes over and takes over this ship. He introduces himself to the bridge crew. He makes it clear that he's in command, but he respects them. And to me, he took over the ship in the show, and he took over the show. And he saved the show for me. I don't know that I would have made it all the way through season 2 if it wasn't for him. There are other characters that, Michael Burnham is the main character. Sometimes she's likable, sometimes she's not. There are other characters where their motivations for what they're doing change from show to show depending on what the plot requires. So you're not really getting into these characters. The Doctor and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the Spore Man who helps fly the ship, they alternate between being sympathetic and being aggravating. So I really appreciated having Anson Mount come in. It looks like we won't get to see him a lot in season 3, but at least it was a good run for the while. A good run for a while. The storyline in the second season was kind of a mess. The storylines from Picard and this one were relatively similar in that there were external forces from outside the universe trying to come in and end everything, and I don't know if they're going to link them up. I don't think they're certainly not on the same timeline, but I don't know if they're going to try to link them up at any point down the road. So we'll see how season 3 goes. And then speaking of Star Trek Picard, I like it better than Discovery. In fact, here, I'm going to give you my ranking of Star Trek series. So far, my least favorite has been Discovery. Again, it's only in season 2. How bad was season 2 of Next Generation, right? So maybe it will get better. Then Picard, then Enterprise, then Voyager, then Deep Space Nine, then TNG, and then the original series. So basically in order, except for Discovery and Picard, right? But they're neck and neck. Picard has some good things going for it. I really, really actually like the darker part of Picard in the sense that what they do is they go in and they take a look at some of the effects that would have been secondary from other shows. Like in The Next Generation, okay, they fight the Borg, they destroy a Borg cube, or they take it out, and then they swoop away and fly somewhere else. You never see it again. Well, that Borg cube is filled with Borg that have been assimilated from other species. What happens to them? Right? And that's a big part of Star Trek Picard. One of the dogs, I think something must be getting delivered. Or there's another dog walking by outside the front of the house. You know what? I'll pause this until they shut up. Okay, it's been quiet for a few seconds. It wasn't a delivery. My wife had gotten home from the grocery store, so the dogs were yapping at her until she came in from the garage. And in the meantime, I got to hear her shout for joy because she successfully got toilet paper, apparently when she was out picking up a prescription. So that's good. And then she started throwing a toy for one of the dogs who's been running back and forth on the barewood floors right above my head for several minutes. But now it's gotten quiet again. So let's continue. Now, I think I was talking about Star Trek Picard and talking about Borg and the backside to all the Star Trek stories that are in the colorful, bright, and happy universe. The backstories have a darker side to them, right? These Borg cubes, the Borg are defeated, the cubes are now floating in space, but they're still filled with people that have been assimilated from other civilizations. So what's going to happen to them, right? And in Star Trek Picard, that's a key part of the story, where there's a Borg cube that's been sitting there, and now they have entire crews of people inside this cube basically restoring what they call XBs, the ex-Borgs, to their former self. That is a really interesting story, and I think by itself would be a cool thing to follow. Now, it turns out that is just one component of a larger mess of a story that involves Data and Data's offspring and, other sentient life outside the universe and synthetic life forms and all sorts of stuff it gets in its own way a lot. There's only 10 episodes. Some of the episodes are kind of slow-paced. Some of the episodes are fun because you get to visit with old characters. Some of the old characters behave in ways that contradict something that came before or spoil something that came before. For example, after having watched Star Trek Picard, I now wish that Voyager never got back to the Alpha Quadrant because they were better off staying in the Gamma Quadrant, particularly 7 of 9. So what's the point of Voyager now? Right? So there's a good way to look at the dark side of things, and then I think there's just being edgy and dark and gritty for the sake of being edgy and dark and gritty, and I think that's where they went. Now, the cinematography of Picard is much more pleasing to watch than Discovery, so that's fine. But there are some things to enjoy. By the tail end of the season, the story's picking up. Sometimes it's now going by a little bit too fast. There's too many components being squished together. The last couple of 2 or 3 episodes, it's gotten to the point now where it's like a fantasy quest where you're now following 3 or 4 different groups of people. There's Picard and Android Girl over here. There's Space Legolas still running around on the Borg cube over here. There's Murder Woman who never pays for being a murderer, running around with Ship Captain over here. Notice I'm not using their names because I can't really recall them. There are the excess characters that they put into this show. I don't think they're that interesting. The ship's captain does a great job with the role. He gets to play multiple versions of himself, and they take the emergency medical hologram idea and expand it into multiple different versions of the same hologram, and the same guy plays all of them. He does a terrific job, but all in all, I don't find it that interesting. The ship they're flying around on, I don't find interesting. It looks like a flying warehouse. So there are some good things in Star Trek Picard, but there are a lot of things that I didn't enjoy so much. And then the very end of the series, I won't say what it is, but Star Trek having been a show that for series after series has been all about humanity and what it means to be human, they basically spoil all that by saying, it's okay, just keep going even if you're not human anymore anyway. It's all good. Watch the show and you'll figure out what that means. So I can't recommend Discovery. I marginally recommend Picard because there are some fun parts to it, especially when he gets to interact with previous characters that you would expect to come back, or there are some nice surprises. It's like, oh wow, they brought him back. Both of these shows have really good conversational throwbacks to the original series, to Next Generation, names, places, events. I mean, the mythology, the lore is really threaded together. So the creators of these newer shows, they're really good on watching some of the details, but I don't know that they get Star Trek itself. I think they're taking the lore and just packaging it with whatever the science fiction style of the day happens to be, coming from The Expanse or Firefly or whatever it is. So now I'm caught up on all my Star Trek television series. I've watched them all. I'm re-watching Deep Space Nine, but I did watch that all the way through the first time around, so it's not so much catching up, it's just revisiting, and it's a lot of fun. I gave you my ranking of Star Trek series in order from least to most favorite. While I'm doing all this, every once in a while I take a break from the series and am watching the movies too, so I've watched all 4 of the Next Gen movies, the first 3 of the... This is just not my day for making videos. I've watched the first 3 original cast movies, so I'll watch the next 3 of those, and then maybe I'll pull out the J.J. Abrams, and maybe I could report back in my ranking of all the Star Trek movies that there are too. So thanks for visiting Metal Professor's Media Corner. If you want to see my alter ego, go check out my Music Basement videos, get a flavor of what I like in the heavy metal and rock and roll eras, and you can tune into my radio show, Mostly Metal, on WVLP in Valparaiso, Indiana, Wednesday nights at 10 U.S. Central Time, Sunday nights at 8. So take care, and if you have dogs, maybe they'll be barking less today than mine are.